This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so today's topic is Maarat HaMachpelah. Literally, we'll soon see the verses that discuss it. Maarat means cave, HaMachpelah, which means double. There's a duality there. And we'll explain some different aspects of that duality, the simple reason that Rashi gives, and another deeper meaning according to the Zohar. And we'll discuss historically what's happened. We'll start with the biblical times, move on to historically what happened over the ages with Maarat HaMachpelah, and then it'll bring us to practical halacha today, meaning how do we view Maarat HaMachpelah, and in English, the tomb of the Patriarchs, and are Jews allowed to daven, to pray there today, as essentially it has become a mosque, or at least partially a mosque. So we will touch upon the greater halachic question of Jews entering a mosque. We had a previous Lunch and Learn years ago on Jews entering churches and mosques. So this will relate to that somewhat. And we will see if this will be a 1 week or a 2 week installment of this topic. And of course, Maarat HaMachpelah is very much in the news today, as it is in the city of Hebron. There is Kiryat Arba, which is the Jewish enclave there in the area. And in recent history, we've had a lot going on with Maarat HaMachpelah, with who is allowed there, who's not allowed there. There was a horrific murder of Muslims who were praying there by a Jewish fellow. And it's been in the news quite a bit and continues to be in the news quite a bit. And we're going to see that even though it's very clear that Abraham purchased it, nevertheless, there is still much dispute over it. So let's go to the very, very beginning, which is in Bereshit, Parshat Chaye Sarah, the Parsha of the life of Sarah begins. These are the years of the life of Sarah, but of course, it begins right away with the passing of Sarah Imenu, Sarah, the matriarch, and Avraham going to buy this land from Ephron in order to have a burial place for Sarah. And the Torah does not mention what drew Avraham. How Avraham knew of this place, but we will see as we work our way through. So let's begin with the simple verses over here. Batamat Sarah, verse 1, Sarah died Bekiryat Arba, in Kiryat Arba, he Hebron, which is Hebron, Be'eretz Canaan, in the land of Canaan. Vayavo Avraham, and Avram came lispod lisarah, to eulogize Sarah, v'liv kota, and to cry for her. And it's interesting, if you see in the Hebrew there, that the letter kaf is written smaller than the other letters, and actually in the Torah itself. So the letter v'liv kota, the last word on this first line here, vav lamed vev vav vet, kaf tav hey, the kaf is smaller than all the other letters. And commentators learn out that Abraham's crying for Sarah was somewhat muted, because this was not a tragic death, a death that we view as tragic when it happened in what we view as prematurely, but Sarah had lived a good, long, fulfilling, meaningful life, and therefore his crying was minimized, represented by the small letter kaf. Vayakam Avram, next verse. Avram got up, mi'al panei meito, vayidaber, and he spoke. El b'nei Chet, he spoke to the Hittites, saying, Ger v'toshav anochi imachem, I'm a resident, I'm a settler amongst you. Tenu li, give to me, sell to me, achuzat kever imachem, a burial site amongst you, v'ekvara meiti milfanai, that I may bury my dead from before me. right? I skipped certain verses. V'yiten li, let him sell to me Maarat HaMachpelah, the cave of Machpelah, asher lo biktzei sadehu, which is at the edge of his field, b'kesef malay, for full money. Yitnanu, let him sell it to me, b'tochechem, amongst you, as an achuzat kever, as a burial site. Maarat HaMachpelah. So Rashi there, and we said it's in Kiryat Arba. It's in Kiryat Arba, the Kirya, the city or the town. Arba, of course, we know means four. If you just look down to the Rashi, source number 2, Rashi there explains for us, why was it Kiryat Arba? What is the four aspect here? Al Shem Arba Anakim Shal Yusham. There were 4 giants who lived in that city. There was Will Chamberlain, there was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar of that day, there was Achiman, Sheshai, Talmai, and their father. Davar Acher, another explanation Rashi gives, Al Shem Arba Zugot, Shenikbru Sham B'Kiryat Arba. There were 4 couples who were buried there in Kiryat Arba, in the city of 4. So according to the second explanation, it's the city of 4 couples. Ish v'ishto, a man and his wife. Who were the 4 couples? Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve. Avram v'Sarah, Abraham and Sarah. Yitzchak v'Rivka, Isaac and Rebekah. Yaakov v'Leah, Jacob and Leah. So it's called Kiryat Arba. The reason the Torah refers to it as Kiryat Arba is, according to the second explanation, there are 4 couples that will be buried there. Which brings us back to Avraham, that somehow Avraham sensed, and we'll soon see from the Zohar how it was, that this was a special place because none other than Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, were already buried there. Let's continue with our conversation over here. So Avram says to Ephron, sell me Maarat HaMachpelah. Hello, Deborah. Good to have you on board. Sell me Maarat HaMachpelah. I'll pay you full price for it. And Ephron answers, Adoni, my master, Shema'eni, listen to me. Eretz Arba Me'ot Shekel Kesef, land that's a paltry 400 shekels of silver. What's a $1.5 million property between me and you? Beini uveincha, mahi, between me and you. What is it? Veit medcha kavor, please go ahead and bury. Vayishma Avraham el Ephron. Avram heard exactly what Ephron meant, exactly where he was going with this, and he paid out to Ephron et hakesef asher diber, the money that he had stipulated before the people of Chet, Arba me'ot shekel kesef over l'socher, 400 silver shekel at the merchant's rates. Stay Ephron, Hashem Machpelah, Vayakam, stay Ephron, and this now became the Mara and the cave that was in it and all the trees there. It all became LaAvraham, LeMikna, to Avraham as an acquisition, Leinei B'nei Chet, before the eyes of B'nei Chet, B'chol Shar Iro, before the gate of the city where they all gathered, the Acharei Chen, and afterwards, Kava Avram buried Sarah his wife by Maarat Stei HaMachpelah, by the plain, the field of Mamre in Hebron, in the land of Canaan. Vayakam Asadeh. The English says, thus the field passed to Avram. But actually, Vayakam means it arose, that it was now lifted up. It was heightened in its spirituality, that now it belonged to Avraham, la'achuzat kever me'et b'nei Chet. So that is what the Torah tells us of Avraham's acquisition of Maarat HaMachpelah in order to have this burial place for Sarah. Eventually, it was already the burial place for Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve. Eventually, it will be now for Sarah, and then for Avram, and then Yitzchak and Rivka, and Yaakov and Leah. We know that Rachel, is buried by the way to Beit Lechem in Bethlehem today. So what's interesting that the Torah leaves out for us is what attracted Avram to this place. How did Avraham know of this place? And what attracted Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, to be buried in this place? So let me scroll down. We have the Zohar on the book of Ruth. And there I underlined the parts that we'll be going over. Rabbi Kisma Amar, and I apologize, I was not able to easily find, hello Colin, welcome aboard. I was not able to easily find a Zohar translation, but I will have to do that for you. Rabbi Kisma Amar, Rabbi Kisma says, Maarat HaMachpelah Samuch lepetach Gan Eden. It was nearby to that entrance of the Garden of Eden from which Adam and Chava were banished after they had eaten from the Eitz Hadat, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It was Samuch, it was nearby lepetach Gan Eden, to that entrance of Gan Eden. Bisha shemeta Chava, at the time that Chava died, Ba Adam lekavra sham. Adam went to bury her there. V'sham heiriach merechut Gan Eden, v'oto hareach shaya sham. And he smelled the fragrance of the Garden of Eden from that fragrance that was there in the garden that he was familiar with from the time that he was there before he was banished. So this was close to the entrance of the Garden of Eden, and it had the scent, the fragrance of the Garden of Eden. V'lo hayam, skipping down to where I underlined again in red, v'lo hayam mi sheyodea bo, and there was no one who knew about this, ad sheba Avram Avinu v'nichnas l'sham, until Avraham came, many generations later, v'nichnas l'sham, entered there, v'ra'a oto, saw Adam and Chava buried there, v'heriach reach bisamim shel Gan Eden, and he smelt the fragrant smell of the Garden of Eden. Now, according to this Zohar, if the fragrance of the Garden of Eden was there well after the time of the Garden of Eden being in an potentially accessible place on earth, so the Zohar is teaching us an added level. And we'll soon see another Zohar on this. And that added level is that there is the world to come, the Gan Eden. Nowadays, Gan Eden represents the next stage. And there is this world. And there is that flashpoint where the two of them connect. And that is by Maarat HaMachpelah, which gives us an added understanding. We said Kiryat Arba, there are 4 couples there, and Kefal means a duality. So it's normally understood that the duality is there are these four dynamic duos, these 4 amazing couples are buried there. So it's a burial place for the couples, Maarat HaMachpelah, Kefel. But according to the Zohar, there's another duality, that this place has this duality of the spiritual world and the physical world. And we therefore understand why this is a place that is especially set aside for tefillah, for prayer. which again we'll have to then touch upon. Now that it is a mosque, are Jews allowed to daven there? So far we have that Adam sensed its place, recognized the fragrance, chose that as a place for the burial of Chava, and that is where his son Seth buried him when he passed away. But that became unknown then to everyone else, and it was forgotten. And Ephron has this field with this dark, rocky cave in the corner, which is of no value to him. He did not have the eyes to recognize the light of that cave. Abraham did. When was that? So now let's go further down. And this Zohar, thanks to Sefaria.org, has with it the English translation. So how did Abraham know about this? How did he perchance upon this cave and recognize the treasure that it was? The Zohar says as follows, Rabbi Elazar Omer, Beshata da'al Avram b'Maarata, at the time when Avram entered the cave, Heach al, how did he enter? How did he know about this cave? Why did he go to enter this cave? Begin davi ra'at abatre tahu egla. Fascinating. We know that the three angels, though Avram did not know that they were angels, passed by, and Avram brought them into his home, and he hosted them. The pasuk says, "Ve'el habakar ratz Avraham," and to the cattle Avraham ran. Vahu ben bakar arak, and one of the calves ran away. What did Avram do? He ran after it. And it ran ad hahu ma'arta. It ran to that cave. Va'ala batre. And he ran after it. V'chama ma d'chama. And he saw what he saw. So he saw Adam and Chava buried there, and he understood this was a holy place. And when the time would come that he would need a burial place for Sarah, this is the place that he went directly to. So Adam and Chava smelled the fragrance of Gan Eden and chose that as their burial place. I didn't mention before. So it's Maarat HaMachpelah. I said before, it has this duality of the spiritual world and the physical world. And what city is it in? My friends, it's in the city of Hebron. What is the root of the word, the name Hebron? Chet, Bet, Resh, Chaver, Chibur, connection. That is a city where there is this connection of the spiritual and the physical. That is why Adam wanted to be buried there. Avraham, when he was involved, and it's no coincidence, of course, that it's when he was involved, heavily involved, in hosting and doing the mitzvah of Hachnasat Orchim, of bringing in guests. And there was a challenge. The animal that he wanted to slaughter, to bring to them, ran away. He didn't say, forget it, we'll go vegetarian. He ran after this animal. And that animal led him to Maarat HaMachpelah, to this cave. And that is where he saw that which he saw, the Zohar says. He saw Adam and Chava there, and he chose this as the burial place for him, for his wife, eventually for himself, his son and daughter-in-law, grandson and granddaughter-in-law. 2, the Zohar continues in the second paragraph there. Begin de'iud sole kol yoma v'yoma. Avraham prayed every day. V'avi napik ad hahu chakal, and he would come out to the field to havi salik rechin ilan, where there was this heavenly fragrance. Avram would go out to the cave to pray, go out to the field to pray there, and he smelled this heavenly fragrance. V'chama nahora, and he saw nahora, he saw this light. Dinapik migo ma'arata, that was emanating from that cave. V'tzali taman, and he prayed over there. V'taman malel imei kudsha brichu, ubegin kach ba'alei tiyuftei havi bahu atar tadir. Okay, and God appeared to him there, spoke to him there, and therefore that is why he wanted that cave, and he always had a desire for it. But according to the Zohar, which continues, which I didn't copy for us, the Zohar continues and says, but he didn't want to give it away, right? All of a sudden, once a person knows that there is a bikush, as they say, that it's in demand, then all of a sudden the price goes up and everybody wants it. When I was living in Israel, so behind my apartment building, there was a steep cliff. And one of my neighbors had a brilliant idea. They were doing excavations to build some new buildings. There was loads of earth. So he hired the contractors who were building there to take the earth, which anyhow they had to pay to find a place to get rid of it, to dump it behind his building. And that way they built up the land there, and they had a very nice area which they turned into a backyard. I said, great idea. So I and my neighbors, we approached the contractor, and it was like 15 shekel for every truckload because, again, the contractor was saving money by doing that. So I approached him, and I said, we'd also like truckloads. He said, great. I said, 15 shekel? He said, no, ma pitom. What do you think, 15 shekel? 150 shekel. So I asked, why was it 15 shekel for him and 150 shekel for me? He said, yesh bikush, because now it's in demand. I said, toda rabah, thank you very much. Ein bikush, it's not in demand. And I walked away because I knew that he had to pay elsewhere to dump it. He calls me back, beseder, 15 shekel, 15 shekel. So Avram didn't want to have to do what I had to do with that kablan. So therefore, he didn't show his cards. He didn't show an interest in buying it earlier. Now he needed a burial site for Sarah. Now he went and he approached him. And of course, that became the tomb of the patriarchs, the matriarchs, Adam Chava, Avram Sarah, Yitzchak Rivka, Yaakov, and Rachel. Now, the Gemara actually learns out a very interesting halacha from this that I think our lady folk are not going to be happy with at first, but if you're listening to the first part, bear with me, and I think you'll see that it's actually very, very beautiful. The Gemara has a concept called a gezerah shava. And a gezerah shava was what we would call a hyperlink, right? Online, a hyperlink is when it is blue and it's underlined, and you click that link and it jumps you over to another related point, related topic. So the Gemara, the Talmud, the rabbis had their version of a hyperlink, and that is called a gezerah shava, meaning one of the ways that we were taught, passed down to us from Moshe, that a way to decode the Torah is that there are certain situations where the same word is written in two places, and that creates this gezerah shava, this hyperlink, and we learn one from the other. And when discussing marriage in the tractate of Kiddushin, Kiddushin, of course, means marriage, and that itself is very telling. that the root of the word of marriage is kadosh, is holiness, is sanctification, because that sanctifies and uplifts a relationship. So one of the ways that Kiddushin is effected is through kesef, through giving either money or something of monetary value that the groom gives to the bride. He says to her, Hariyam Mekudeshet Li, you are sanctified, betrothed to me, sanctified to me. And we typically use a ring, bitabadzu, Hariyam Mekudeshet Li bitabadzu. You are married to me with this ring, via this ring. And that is why if you're up close, you will hear the Mesader Kedushin, the person who is the rabbi who's doing the wedding, will turn to the witnesses and say, is this worth a pruta? A pruta is the smallest denomination back in biblical times, worth about a nickel today. And the answer is yes, it's worth at least a nickel. Of course, it's worth a lot more than that, but it needs to be worth that amount in order to be considered kesef, money, of monetary value worth. So one of the ways through which Kiddushin is effected is kesef. But how do we know that? The verse says simply, Ki yikach ish isha, when a man will take a woman, but doesn't explain how is he taking this woman as his wife? How is he marrying, betrothing this woman? So the Gemara says there's a hyperlink. There's a Gezerah Shava. It says, Kach, ki yikach ish ish, when a man takes a woman. It says it over here in Deuteronomy, in Devarim, where it's discussing marriage. There's another place of kicha, of taking. And where is that? So let's see this Gemara now inside. The Gemara asks, V'kesef minalan. How do we derive that marriage is accomplished, is affected through kesef, through money? And again, that's the way that we do nowadays, typically, by the giving of a ring. The Gemara answers, Gamar, we have a hyperlink. We have a Gezerah Shava. We learn out these two same words. Now, I didn't mention before, we can't make our own Gezerah Shavas. If this hyperlink is either there or it's not there. Meaning, if I have it from my Rebbe, who learned it from his Rebbe, going all the way up to Moshe on Sinai, then it's a live link. And when I click it, the other link opens up. It's a live link. Otherwise, you can click and click and click and click. If it's not a live link, you're not going anywhere with that click. And therefore, right, this is taught from Moshe down to us. This is a live link. It says over here, K'tiv hach, it says over here by marriage. So we learn out kicha, it says kicha here, and it says it also by the field of Ephron. K'tiv hach, it says over here, ki yikach ish isha, when a man will take a wife, marriage. Uktiv hasam, it says over there, natati kesef asadeh, I've given you the money for the field. Kach mimeni, take it from me. So we see kach, taking, is done through a monetary transaction. So at first glance, it doesn't sound overly romantic. How do we learn out how marriage is effected? Oh, from buying a field. You give money, you buy a field. You give money, you marry a wife. Like I said, at first glance, it does not seem to be overly romantic. But in fact, it is very, very beautiful on a number of levels. First of all, it says the word kach, take. But actually, what is Avraham doing? He is giving. He is giving. So in a marriage relationship, the essence needs to be giving. Even if I'm taking, that could also be giving. If I'm allowing someone to do for me, husband allows the wife to do for him, the wife allows the husband to do for her, that is a way of giving. So the taking actually needs to be giving. It needs to be all about giving. And let's take it a step further. Avram wasn't buying a field. He was doing the epitome of giving for his wife. Chesed is an act of giving. Chesed shel emet. Unfortunately, we've had a number of funerals these past few weeks. Chesed shel emet, the true giving, is when there is no reciprocity. When we do for someone who has passed away, that is the epitome of giving. So Avram is not simply buying a field. He's creating an eternal place for his eternal partner. And a marriage, when you look at Stay Ephron, at this field, as our model, that we are entering into an eternity, an eternal chesed that we are doing for one another. And let's take it a step further. It's not just any field. This is his first acquisition in the land of Israel. Now, Avram, through Sarah, had two legacies, the land and the nation. See, here he is creating the legacy of himself and his wife. That's what this acquisition was. He wasn't simply buying a field. He was creating their legacy. And so too, of course, we learn marriage out from that, where we create together, husband and wife create their legacy. And one last point I'd like to bring out over here. Ephron charged Avram a lot of money, 400 silver coins, and the pasuk said, Over lesocher, that was the most usable coins. Right? If it was in Israel, they didn't want shekel, rak dolarim, only wanted dollars. Right? The best currency, the currency that's most easily accepted everywhere. So Ephron walked away saying, oh, did I take this guy for a ride? I got the deal of a lifetime over here. And Avraham, he walked away saying, wow, no matter what I paid for it, this is the burial place of Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve. This is the place of Machpelah, the duality, where the scent, the fragrance of Gan Eden is. This is the place of Hebron, Chibur, of connection. This is the flashpoint of heaven and earth. And I bought this for a mere 400 silver shekel. I got the deal of a lifetime. And that is the template that we build our marriages on. The groom should look at the bride and say, wow, she's out of my league. I can't believe she agreed to marry me. I got the greatest fortune possible. And the wife needs to look at the husband and say, what a catch. What a wonderful person. I got the deal of a lifetime. So that is what we learn out. That is what and how we learn out our beautiful kiddushin. And again, marriage doesn't have that same power as kiddushin. Kiddushin has the kedusha, has the holiness. And that is Maarat HaMachpelah in the biblical times. Ultimately also, Esav's head, the whole story over there, was also buried there. And that is the tomb of the patriarchs and matriarchs, Maarat HaMachpelah today, where people go and daven. People go and pray, recognizing that it is a very holy place. Now, Islam, ever since the Crusades, Muslims have had control of Maarat HaMachpelah, and that is one of the places similar to the Temple Mount that even in 1967, when we liberated the old city and the Temple Mount, and when we liberated Hebron, we allowed the Muslims to still have a certain degree of control and authority over it. During different times of Muslim control, Jews were only allowed to go up. There were steps leading up to it, up to the seventh step and not beyond that. They strictly restricted Jewish ability to go there and pray. They fully expected us to do the same. Actually, the tribal head of the family that was in charge of Hebron in 1967 brought the keys over. I think it was to Rav Goren, who was the Rav HaRashi, the chief rabbi, at least of the Tzava, of Tzahal at the time. But that's not the approach that we took. And as we very proudly say, that it's only under Jewish control that all religions have the ability to worship freely in their places. But there is an account, and when the Muslims after the Crusades took control, so they transformed it into a mosque. Obviously, we're not too thrilled with that practice, but from their point of view, Islam is religion 3.0. There was Judaism 1.0. Christianity thought they were 2.0. Islam thinks they're 3.0. So therefore, it only makes sense that on the churches and on the synagogues or on the ruins of our temple in the Beit HaMikdash, that they will build a mosque. It only makes sense from their perspective, of course. Now, at different times in history, Jews were able to daven there or near the Maarat. The Muslims also added on to the building because they felt that getting too close to the actual grave sites, that was too holy, that was too sacrosanct. And therefore, they built up on the area. Rav Avadia Bar Tanura, I don't have this in English, but I will read it for us in Hebrew, and I will translate it. Fascinating. He writes about his visit to Maarat HaMachpelah. He lived 1445 to 1515, so we're talking about the 15th century. He writes of his visit to Maarat HaMachpelah, and he writes, Hayiti Maarat HaMachpelah. I was at the tomb of this double tomb, this double cave. V'yesh aleh binyan gadol shel Yishmaelim, and there is upon it a large building that the Yishmaelim built, b'makomo, in that place. Ubaim mikol malchut Yishmael, and they come from all of the kingdoms of Yishmael. All of course, Yishmael, he refers to them as the descendants of Abraham's son that he had through Hagar, Yishmael. So the kingdom of Yishmael, we will call it the Arab kingdom. Lihishtateach sham. They come from all the Arab lands, all the Yishmaelites, all the Muslims come, Lihishtateach sham, to bow down over there. Ubetoch hama'ara atzma, but into the cave itself, asher bo kvurim avot, where the patriarchs and matriarchs are buried, lo yikanei sham lo Yehudi v'lo Yishmaeli. No one is allowed to enter there. Proper credit needs to be given that the Muslims protect and the holy sites in a way that makes sure that there is no overstepping, there is no immodesty there. So no one's allowed to enter there, not Jew nor Muslim. Aval ondim hayishmaelim lamala, but they stand in a place above it. The derech aruba, and through a window there, mishal shalim lamata, they lower down avukot dolkot, candles, shemadlikim sham tamid, that are always burning there, betoch ama'ara, within the cave. Uvaim lishtateach sham mina yishmaelim, and some Muslims come there to that window to bow down, mitnadvim ma'ot, and they donate money, umashlichim b'toch ha'ma'ara derech harabotahen, and they throw it through that window down into that cave. The kasher yirtzu lakachan amot misham, and when they want to collect the money that has been thrown down there, mishal shalim b'chavalim, they lower using ropes, nar katan batul, a young innocent child. They lower him down el toch ha'ma'ara, into the cave area. V'lakeach ha'ma'ot, he gathers the money that was thrown down there. Ve'ola, and comes up. Kach sipru elai k'tzat yudim sham. That's what some of the Jews who were there told me of the practice. He started Hayiti, I was there. But this practice, he didn't witness this practice of a child being lowered down. But some of the Jews who were there told me, Rav Avadi Bar Tanura, about that. The Chol Hebron v'Sadotel Megarshan, the whole city of Hebron, the fields and the areas around, they are all based around this Maarat HaMachpelah. Uv'chol Yom, and on a daily basis, Mechalkim Lechem Unezira Dashim, they distribute bread and lentil soup, different soups. Otav shel acher shel kitnia, there was some other type of porridge, some food. La'aniyim, they always distribute food to the poor there. Bein la'aniyah Yishmael, whether it is to the poor Muslims, o Yehudim, the poor Jews, o Arelim, or to the uncircumcised, meaning those who are neither Muslim or Jewish. They do this lichvodo shel Avraham Avinu. They do this out of honor to Avraham Avinu. I've mentioned many times that the person that most people, who has the greatest amount of people today who would identify with him, that would have to be Avraham. Because you've got all Jews, Christians, and Muslims, whether it's Avraham, Abraham, or Ibrahim, that is the greatest amount of people today who ascribe to him. And they would do this out of honor to Avram. Of course, Avram was known for his hospitality. And this is a very ingrained midah attribute in the Arab world today, of course, in the Jewish world, but in the Arab world, once a person is in the house, you're safe. You might get knifed when you walk out, but once you're in the house, you are treated royally. The chalon katan, and he writes there's a small window, yesh michutz lechoma, that is outside the wall, asher al gav hamara, that is on this cave. V'omrim, and they say shachalon ahu, that window yored lamata, goes straight down neged, across from kvaro, the grave site, the burial site, shel Avraham Avinu, of Avram Avinu. V'sham nitan reshut liYehudim lihishtateach, and their permission is given to the Jews, lihishtateach, that they can bow themselves down ulipalel in prayer, nochach, across from hachalon hahu, across from that window. Achen, betoch hachoma, ashal gav, but going inside that area that is above the ma'ara, lo yuchlu lihikanes. To there, no one is able to enter in. V'ani hitpalalti, Rabbi Avadi Bar Tanura says, I prayed nochach, across from hachalon hakatan hahu. I prayed across from that small window. So we'll have to continue next week But are we allowed to pray, to daven to God in a mosque? And we'll see that there are different opinions. There's Rabbeinu Nisim on one side and Rambam Maimonides on the other side. And how does that translate for us today? Well, from the testimony of Rav Avadia, it seems to be very clear that in the building that they built, they built it as a place for the Muslims to pray, that we are allowed to daven. And of course, that will depend on do we view Islam as being monotheism? Christianity is another question. Again, we dealt with that a number of years ago. But that will play into entering a mosque or entering into a church. So we'll see, as we see from Rav Avadia, Bartanura, not to be confused with Rav Avadia Yosef, who was one of the greatest Torah scholars. He was the Rav Rashi, the chief rabbi, Sephardic chief rabbi in Israel, until he passed away about 11, 12 years ago, I believe it was. And he was truly an incredible person and had encyclopedic knowledge. Many had said that before you had computers, you could do a search to find anyone who discusses a certain halakha question. You would go to his Yabia Omer, which was his the svarim that he wrote, and anytime a halakha question came up, he would quote anyone who ever spoke about it. He would bring it all together. So that was 20th century. This is 15th century. But again, from Rav Avadia Bartanura, and Rav Avadia, he is the one who wrote the main perush, the main explanation, commentary that we have on Mishnah today. That was written by Rav Avadia Bartanura. See, he writes of his going there in the 15th century and his davening there. So we'll continue with that idea as we go forward. So we've gone from the biblical times to the mid-centuries over here, the 14th, 15th century, 15th, 16th century, I should say, and then we'll come to how does that apply to us today going in there and davening. We'll pick up on that, my friends, next week, and part of that conversation will need to be how is Islam viewed from a Torah perspective in terms of monotheism, in terms of idolatry. So we'll call it over here. I wanted to let everybody know, first of all, wish everybody a good day and a good Shabbos. Next week, Wednesday evening, at the JCC, one of our members, Joel Paremba, is going to be speaking. I'm also going to be speaking, just introducing him for a few moments. But Joel is going to be speaking about an amazing book that he wrote, that I've written. I helped a little bit with the editing of the book, about his father's experiences as a 9-year-old on his own going through the Holocaust, his amazing tale of survival and eventually coming to the States and building a family over here. So that is Wednesday night at the JCC at 6 p.m. The cost, the official cost, and it will be included in my email that's going to go out tomorrow before Shabbos. And the official cost is $10 for JCC members, $15 for non-members. But if any of you just put in the notes there that you are coming through Beth Jacob, you will get the JCC member price. If you're not also a member of the JCC, you'll get the JCC member price of $10. And it's an amazing story, an amazing book, an amazing lesson, very, very inspiring. And I urge all of you to come to join that, because you will certainly gain much, not regret it, gain much, and appreciate that you did. Okay, my friends, tomorrow night, Shabbos is getting earlier and earlier. So those who are joining us in person, tomorrow night, we have Mincha at 5:35. Kabbalat Shabbat will be at about a few minutes before 6. Thank you all for joining. Any questions, points, anybody wants to make? Yes, Ken.
Just saying Toda.
Oh, you're very welcome. You're
with
very welcome.
participation.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, everybody. Good seeing some of you. I get to see you. Some I get to see your names. Good having everybody on board. Okay, be well, everybody.
Thank you.
You're very, very welcome.
Chodesh Tov, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, Deborah.